Hello, 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 everybody. This is Tanika Steens, and I am your host for Mind Your Business. And tonight, my guest is Isiah Houston, and he is the host and producer of the Southern Spectre podcast and the Southern Spoonful podcast. And he's been podcasting for just little over a year. He's grown to come to love podcasting with hard work and dedication and an open mind for podcasting. But it turns out he loves storytelling. And what better way to communicate than telling stories? And tonight, he is my guest, and he will honor us with his presence by telling us his love of podcasting. And maybe he might even tell us some stories. So, with no further ado, please welcome Isiah to Mind Your Business. Isiah, please tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to be here on your show. It is a pleasure and an honor. Um, well, a little bit about me. I'm from South Carolina, South Carolina native. I'm down near close to the low country of South Carolina, so about an hour, little over an hour away from the beach, from that coastal region. And just growing up, I always heard these stories, these things that my grandmother would tell, and before long, it kind of became ingrained in what I knew as truth. And like I said, like I told you before, that storytelling is a basic form of communication, and it goes back. It's one of the earliest forms of record keeping. And so as time went on, these stories would be passed down from generation to generation. And when I started out podcasting, I was like, I'm really intrigued with these stories, these legends, these myths, this folklore. And before long, I realized that it wasn't that so much that I was enthralled with, but the fact of storytelling in general. I love to sit down and hear a good story. And, and that's the great thing about all of us. We all have a great story to tell. Um, Others are more jagged than others, but it makes for a story nonetheless. And so I started out with the Southern Spectre podcast, and I was very slow at first. I didn't know, am I doing it right? Am I sounding okay? But before long, a few episodes in, I eventually found my voice. And once I did, it just kind of, steamrolled from there. And, yeah, I mean, it's been quite the journey. I've never took it as I take it seriously, but not to the point where I'm gonna I'm gonna make some huge bank off of this or anything, because I don't see that happening. But it's almost therapeutic, so to speak, because in my podcast I am a solo host. Uh, what you hear now is my voice. I'm most of the time I'm the only one on it, not unless I have a special guest or friend for a specific episode or something. But for the most part, it's just me, and it's kind of hard to banter back and forth with yourself. So I had to make it interesting. So before long, I was throwing different things in there, different storytelling aspects of, adding some sound effects here, creating a mood and atmosphere for the listener, and almost like an audiobook, I guess you could say. And yeah, I just have really enjoyed doing it. Over time, I have, going back to what I was saying earlier about the whole storytelling aspect. Us from the South, we can be some very uh, vivid characters at times, and we even though we have a very, what's the words I'm looking for, a very we have a past, we have a culture, but sometimes that past is not so kind. And I started out with my second podcast, and I called it the Southern Spoonful. Now, I started that with the idea of showcasing and kind of putting on display certain, uh, I guess you could say, like restaurants and things up front, and kind of going around and interviewing those people, those owners, and those chefs, and what they had to offer us as consumers, and their whole story, and learning their whole backstory and everything. And so, what I eventually came to realize was that when I said Spoonful, it was a number of different people, artists, musicians, um, like I said, the chefs, just everybody in general, and those of us like kind of what you're doing that have a story to tell. And so I kind of took it on the road. Literally, earlier this year, I was going around to different restaurants. I was going around and visiting and doing in-person interviews with everybody. I had a great time doing it. Although when you're trying to do two podcasts and do work a full time job, it can take a toll on you. So I've kind of taken a break from that, but I just wrapped up with season one for the Southern Spoonful, and I just have enjoyed the people that I've been introduced to, and the amount of knowledge and wealth and their stories that they had to tell as well. So I just really enjoy doing this all the way around. It has been a most definite experience.
Yeah. So both podcasts, they're different podcasts, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
One,
tell us.
the Southern.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. The
No, go
Southern
ahead. Go ahead.
Spectre. The Southern Spectre actually revolves around Southern-based paranormal. And so I threw in those legends, those myths, all that folklore into that podcast. With the Southern Spoonful, like I said, it just has to do with artists and the restaurant owners and the chefs and those who love to create. So, yeah.
Yeah. So when you do the paranormal, what type of stories are you talking about?
Um, All right. Well, just the most basic ones that I like to talk about. I talk about the Bu Hag, for example, from Gullah Geechee culture. That one has always kind of surprised me. Almost, it's not a very fun story to hear, but it is. It does give me the creeps, to be honest with you. But it's a part of that culture, and I really do love digging into that. I've also told of the Gray Man of Paulie's Island here in South Carolina. I've also told of Lavinia Fisher, who was the claimed first woman serial killer in South Carolina. Yes. Um, let's see. I'm trying to think of some other ones that I'm more familiar with. Uh, all I've spoke of the Lizard Man. I know we all remember the Lizard Man from uh, Scape or Swamp down around what was that, Bishopville, near Myrtle Beach, and
Wow.
because I remember that was crazy because everybody was going. It was Lizard Mania there for a while. Lizard Man for president and bumper stickers and all that wild stuff. So yeah, these things have a way of you know taking on a life of their own and just kind of running away with things. But it's interesting to see it uh, whether those things are real or not. It's interesting to hear the story behind them.
So have you ever done one on Bigfoot?
I have not, because Bigfoot is a very wide topic, literally.
My
Uh,
husband is on the lookout for Bigfoot. He wants to find Bigfoot, and I laugh because he watches these shows, and I'm like, let's go Sasquatching.
what are some other names for Bigfoot I've heard? Of course, the Yeti. You have
Yeah.
the skunk ape. Yes, uh, it, just a whole number of different names that he likes to go by. But yeah, I don't necessarily want to run into Bigfoot myself.
Yeah.
Uh, no, not by a long shot.
That is too funny. Okay, so what kind of feedback do you get off of these shows? What are people saying about them?
For the most part, it's all positive feedback. Whether it's a story they've heard, once this is their first time hearing the story, or whether this is a story they've heard a number of times. That's the good thing about storytelling. Even though you have may have heard this story before, you've never heard me tell it. And so,
Yeah.
that's the great thing about storytelling. And just some storytellers are better than others. And just everybody has their own way about things. But yeah, for the most part, it's a positive feedback. Everybody loves learning about that kind of stuff. And for oddly enough, we as humans find that kind of stuff intriguing, and they just kind of seek it out. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's been pretty feedback's pretty good, so I can't complain at all.
That's That's funny. My husband's watching. He said he can't wait to find Bigfoot from afar. So now, podcasting has been around for a long time, but it's like a new era of podcasting is going on right now. And this is like a major time right now to just break into podcasting. So, what made you go into podcasting opposed to writing and doing like fictional work?
Um, well, that's a good question because I never actually gave any thought to writing until I actually started doing the podcast. And then the wife said, "You know, you could be a writer." And I was like, "No, no, I'm not going to do that because that's that much more work I'm going to have to do." But yeah, I mean, it's anything's, there's nothing that's, it's all on the table at this point. And I wouldn't discredit, doing anything like that. Maybe a collaboration with someone and, doing something like that. I'm all about that. That's great stuff. But for the most part, um, I like the verbal storytelling aspect of everything because you can make it up. Sometimes you can add a little flair
Yeah,
here and there, and it's one thing to put your words down on paper, but if I'm not the one reading it back to you, you know,
absolutely. I don't know if you go through Anchor FM, but on Anchor, you can actually, once you upload, you can go to WordPress and it'll actually put it in a blog. So it'll come up on a blog and it's free. It automatically puts it in a digital blog for you. So that's kind of cool. We can talk about that later if you want to know more about it.
well, that is a tool that I just recently kind of picked up on. I've been trying to, for the most part, it did a majority of my episodes that way, but then there's some here that I've done recently that for whatever reason it does not want to transcribe them. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so now the Southern Spoon, Spoonful, Spoonful. When you went around and started talking to people, how did they embrace you when you came in, wanting to interview them? Were they like opening and welcoming with open arms with it, or were they like, "What are you talking about? You want to come in and do what?" Or how do they take you?
Uh, you know, we are living in different times now, and for the most part, most everybody was more than willing to open their doors. Yeah, yeah, come on down. We'll plan a day. You can come in on such a date or whatever, and I'll let you come in before the doors open, and that way aside some time to kind of have that conversation. Before before opening hours actually start. I did have some people were still at that point, and I didn't want to make anybody feel uneasy. But at some point, some people were, still at that point where, hey, let's do a remote interview, and I could understand given their current circumstances, and that was not a problem at all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's with everything that's going on, it's like good to have a little bit of fun and some humor and
Oh
lightness
yeah.
going on in the world today because I think sometimes we take things a little too serious and we need to be able to go off into a fairy tale world sometimes and become a character or look at things at a different spectrum maybe. So
Oh, I agree. I agree. When you laugh at yourself, nobody else can laugh at you. So.
absolutely, absolutely. So, tell me about these characters when you come up with them. Is it something that just pops in your head, or do you sit and think them out, like characters that aren't ready a character, or is it characters that you invent also?
For the most part, no. Everything I do as far as the Southern Spectre goes, it's all based on some sort of culture or recorded event, or just like with basic storytelling, a story that somebody heard uh, and has passed on to someone else, and now they're up there, they're retelling their story. And so, yeah, for the most part, I mean, yeah, it's kind of, some of it's actually based on fact. Some of it is a lot like the Lizard Man, and it is unfortunately a made up story. But it's a story nonetheless. But yeah, like I said before, some of our history and some of the things that have happened are not so kind to us as people, as well as just some of the things that had to read upon that it's just crazy to think actually occurred. And so,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean, I've enjoyed every aspect of it.
Yeah. So would you mind sharing like a crazy story, like a piece of a crazy story you've heard or would like to share?
How crazy you want?
Hey, get crazy. I don't care.
Okay.
It's your time. It's your platform. Go for it.
Okay. Let's see. One of my favorites uh, is the legend of the Gray Man of Paulie's Island. Now, Paulie's Island is a sea island, a barrier island right off the coast of South Carolina. Now, the crazy thing about it was a lot of people don't know exactly who it was that first inhabited the island, but a lot of folks believe it was a man by the name of Percival Paulie, and he was one of the first to inhabit it there. Now, upon that time, uh, of course, a slew of other families moved onto the island. You know, one person moves, hey, we all got to move, right? So, oh, this is a better neighborhood. Let's move over here. So, once they got there, uh, it, when you move to the coast, you're always going to experience storms and bad weather, just a lot more than most. And what ended up happening, this prominent family that was living there on the coast at Paulie's Island, they had a young girl, a young daughter, and she was actually engaged to a gentleman from Charleston, South Carolina. And the story goes that he was actually riding horseback to see her at Paulie's Island. And on his way, whether he actually took a wrong turn or the horse got spooked, him and the horse actually ended up in a bed of quicksand. They quickly met their demise in the bed of quicksand. Now, once news got to his fiancee, of course, she was distraught with this news, and she actually went to the beach on Paulie's Island to kind of mourn the loss of her fiance. And while she was out there, she actually encountered a man who was dressed all in gray. Now, once she approached him, she looked up and she saw his face, and she knew at once that it was her fiance who had come back from death itself. And he warned them, said, "You and your family have to get off the island as soon as possible. There's a bad hurricane heading this way, and y'all have to move inland." And so the legend was that, of course, back in those times, they took it as a very bad omen. And so they all moved inland. A few days later, sure enough, a storm passed by. After it passed by and they made their way back to their home, a lot of the homes there on the island had been completely destroyed. All homes, in fact, except for theirs. And so it's believed that if you ever encounter the gray man at Paulie's Island, that you're supposed to take it as a warning of an impending storm. And a lot of folks believe that if you do, your house will be spared. Now, the crazy part about it is over the past 200 years, five major hurricanes have made landfall at Paulie's Island, and the gray man has been spotted before every single one.
And now there's houses that have been spared afterwards, or there's people that talk about this afterwards.
That's what they say. Around here, you'll actually see. It'll make headlines, especially during hurricane season. If he's actually ever spotted, they'll report it on the news. They'll say, "Oh,
Really?
a security camera or boardwalk camera caught what appeared to be the gray man out on the beach." Yeah,
Okay, so
it's
now I'm
it's
going to be
crazy.
looking out for this. If it, I'm going to have to be paying attention to see this because that's amazing. I mean, because sometimes you hear things and you think that they might be myths, but you just never know, right? And
Absolutely.
so, wow. So, whatever happened to that family?
That's a good question. I'm not 100% on that, but that's a definitely a good question.
You're gonna have to look a little deeper into that and let us know.
It sounds like it.
All right. So now, what do you think your grandmother would think about your storytelling?
I think she would most definitely be proud of it. She like I said, there was a lot of stories that I heard, while sitting in the back seat while she's driving, and, her and my grandfather sitting in the front seat, and I'm just sitting back there listening to it. And I used to, even when I got older, approaching my 20s, Grandma, remember the stories you used to tell me? Can you tell them to me again? And she would tell them to me again. And like one of the very first funny ones that I can think of, it's not really funny, but it
Well, come
just
on,
kind of
tell us
sticks out
grandma's
in my
story.
one that kind of sticks out is the fact that she always used to tell me, see, she has a sister, and her sister, in my opinion, looks, even though they're not twins, they look exactly alike. And she used to tell me, my aunt actually has a mole on her face, and she used to tell me that's where the rooster spurred her when she was younger. I was like, do what? This is where the roosters. Grandma, you sure about this? Is there, medical science to back this up? But another one that really stuck out to me too was that, of course, back in those days, everybody used to say that, I had to walk uphill 10 miles both ways in the snow, all that good stuff. Well, she used to tell me that they would work, or they would go to school like a half a day, and then they would make their way back home because they had chores to do too. And so they were like, we are not going to run this household without y'all's help. So one day they were trying to make their way back home, and as they were, now my grandma back then, she had several sisters and brothers, and as they were making their way, she said there was like a pile of old tin, like from an old shed out in the middle of the woods there, and said a storm was coming up. And as it was coming up, the tin on the from the roof was like raising up with the wind as it was blowing, and it was tin rubbing on tin, and as it was making like an eerie moaning sound. And they just said they all heard it, and they just booked it back to the house. They swore up and down it was a ghost.
It's so funny how we get those stories because my mom used to tell me this story when I was a little girl about this tornado. That because I live in Indiana, and so we sit and they say they don't really get tornadoes. But anyways, my mom would tell me this story about this tornado that came, and the tornado picked up either her or her sister. It depends on who's telling the story. So whoever is telling you the story. So my mom would always tell me the story. And as I recall, mom would say that the tornado had got her sister, and my mom would pull her sister's feet and pulled her out of the tornado. But then years later, my aunt was telling me this story about this tornado, and she said that the tornado got my mom and she pulled my mom out of the
Oh
tornado.
my
And I was
word.
like, so never have I got the two of them together to tell this story at the same time. But they both tell this story. Depending on who's telling it, it's always the other one to save the other one from this tornado. So till this day, I
Imagine
don't
that.
know if there really was a tornado. But my mom is the younger sister. So my aunt swears that she's the older sister. She had to save the little sister, right? So,
That's right.
we all hear those stories that that we grow up on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
So
just crazy how they can, like I said before, take on a life of their own, and they kind of grow over time, and a little bit more detail, gets added on top after every generation. And so, like you said, depending on who's telling the story, depends on what kind of version of the story you're going to get.
absolutely. It's so funny because you just have me sitting here thinking about just growing up and hearing things because me and my mom, we used to make up these songs, and I love to just sing and just make up songs. And so my mom used to sing this song to me all the time, and she told me she made this song up. And as I got older, remember before they had videos on television, you did, and so one day I'm sitting there and we have videos now, and this song that my mom made up, these people are on television singing this song, and I'm like, oh my god, mom, these people made your song. She could tell me anything and I'd believe it. I mean, seriously, that's how, until this day, in my mind, I guess I still believe that she made up that song and these people stole this song from her.
It is amazing what older generations have, what they did to entertain themselves. And,
Absolutely.
and so your mom's probably thinking, she's like, that poor child still thinks that that I made that song up.
Yeah, I mean, because I remember seeing it, and I'm just like, oh my god, word for word, mom. They stole your song. You used to sing this song to me. You told me you made that song up, and now they're on television with a video singing your song. So I mean, you'd be like, if it's a fly on the wall, they done stole your song. But it's so great though that you have that, and that's what our foundation is built off of, stories. And
Absolutely.
again, we all have a story. We all come from some kind of background. We all have a foundation, and that's what we're built on. And so it's great to be able to reminisce and have those memories. And that's what the good times and the memories are based off of. So it's great that you're
Absolutely.
able to turn that into something that gives you joy and brings you happiness. And so, what does it really do for you to be able to bring this to life?
Well, for the most part, because there are only so many stories that are based here in the South. Even though we have a bunch of them, a lot of them I have covered in the past, or at least I think I have anyway. Now, I'm sure there's probably some stones unturned that I have yet to find, but for the most part, it takes me probably a good week, maybe 2 weeks to develop a story. Um, it depends on how much I want to tell because some of it may not be relevant. Some of it just may be, I feel like it can't be, I can't really credit it so much, And so what I'll do is actually go out now, I'll pull from maybe 3 or 4 different sources and try to kind of work out what's laying underneath, so to speak. And then I usually, rewrite it, myself and put my own little spin and flair on it. And then, just kind of go from there. And like I said, when I actually tell the story, if you go and have a listen, it's like it's I don't know. I like to make it up a little bit, put a little theater behind it. And like I said, I want when people listen, I want people to like think, Edgar Allan Poe, the Crypt Keeper. I know
Yeah.
everybody knows him, something that really just gives you the chills, like almost to the point where, am I even supposed to be listening to this at this point? So,
Yeah, that's funny you say that because the other night I was watching, I turned on the Twilight Zone and I'm cracking up because I'm just like, when I was a little girl watching it, it was like creepy and scary. But I'm watching it
yep.
now, like, oh my God, this is so not real. But to see pictures with it, it's one thing. But I think to hear your voice with that Southern accent and you telling these stories, I can only imagine that it is just like really fascinating to hear you tell these stories. So I can't wait to really get to listen to your podcast and hear your stories and hear how you tell them.
Well, if you do, let me know what you think.
I definitely will. I'll leave you a review, definitely.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's funny because like I said, I was so scared at the beginning when I first got into it until I found my voice. And once I did, that's the first thing everybody tells me. Oh my God, you have the perfect voice for this. I'm like, no, I have the perfect settings on my computer for this is what I have. But but yeah, for the most part, I mean, I've enjoyed doing this, collaborating with different people like yourself and being able to go and tell some of my stories on other podcasts and having people on my podcast to do the same. And it's kind of wild because to a certain extent, I've never met a group of people as willing to help each other out as the amateur podcaster. I mean, everybody's willing to lend that information. Everybody is willing to, oh, you need somebody to, oh, I'll give you a plug on my show, or yeah, you're more than welcome to come on my show. I'll give you a shout on Instagram or whatever the case may be. And it's just it's crazy. Like I said, you know I've been on the side of the road with a flat tire and no spare before, and nobody wanted to stop to help. And then like when you get into this group, it's like everybody wants to stop to help. So
Yeah, it's
it's a nice
amazing.
change of pace. It
It
is.
is. It does. It's encouraging and it's uplifting and it feels good. And like you said, it's a change of pace and it's a break from the norm. And you're actually bringing something different. And it doesn't matter how many podcasts there are out there. Everybody is bringing something different that someone can get something out of. And so,
Yes.
depending on what kind of day you're having, you can turn on your show and hear a story that's like, wow, I never knew that. Or, you can find out something interesting or hear a story that just takes your mind off of whatever it is you're going through. And you can be enlightened. And just like this story, it's about talking about why you like to tell your story. And
Yeah,
so it's a good way to be able to showcase your talent and to just be able to have a voice. And I think we need
absolutely.
that outlet. I
And
do. What does your
like,
wife think about it?
oh, she's definitely my biggest fan, my biggest supporter. She thought I was a little nuts at first. She's like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I was like, "Why not? Anybody else can do it. Why not I throw my hat in the ring?" And she said at one point, I think about 6 months into it, she said, "Have you made any money off of this thing?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, congratulations, you have a really expensive hobby." I was like, "Well, thanks."
That is too funny. So have you put a lot into it, would you say?
Um, Financially, no, not a whole lot, not as bad as I could have. But
Yeah.
that's the one that's the great thing about today's environment and today's world. We have YouTube, we have people like me and you that are willing to help and to give that bit of knowledge, that one piece of information, because you can scour the depths of the internet for hours upon hours trying to find out that one critical piece of information you're looking for and not discover it. But then you ask the right question or ask the right person, and you're like, oh, you got to do this. And
Yeah.
it's crazy. But yeah, I did a lot, all my research and everything beforehand. And, I said, this sounds like a lot, but I think I could do it. And so
Yeah.
I just, just gave it a shot.
I always say I'm an accidental podcaster because I had no clue what I'm doing. I still don't know what I'm doing. And just like you, it's been a year into this thing. And when I'm like, put me on a stage, give me a microphone, I can go all day long. Put me in front of a camera, and I'm like, no. But I mean, I started out with a phone, and that's all I knew what to do with. And then I moved up and I got a camera. And then my nephew went to the military and he gave me this brand new Yeti microphone. I was like, ooh, and as you saw when we got on, I'm like, I don't even know how to work the thing half the time, but it works. So we'll get it together at some point. And I used to be this person where I felt like everything had to be just right. If it wasn't right, it wasn't working, and I'd freak out. But what I've come to learn is nothing's perfect. Nothing is going to be 100% all the time. And that's what I love about what I do now is you can be your real authentic self. And I like to record the shows live just because it gets me out of my comfort zone. And not only that, it's not about me. I give other people opportunity to be in the spotlight. Plus, when you put it on the podcast, nobody sees what you've done if you've messed up or not. You can you can fine tune all that stuff, and when it goes on the podcast, nobody knows. And so, and people listen because again, people want to hear things. They want to get
Yeah,
a different take on things. They want to have different ideas, and everybody's going through something, and they want to know different ways of doing things. And so I appreciate you for taking the time out to say, hey, I want to talk about what I love. I like telling stories. Stories are our way to communicate. And you're right. I don't think we do it enough. I think that they say testimonies are good for the soul. And I think that's another way of storytelling. Storytelling is like a testimony. It's
yes,
telling your life. It's just putting it into words, and those words have action. And then as you tell the story, you can see it in your mind. You can visualize like what
yep,
you're talking about, what's going on, put yourself in that situation. So I
absolutely.
think it's great. I think it is.
That's one thing too, is that I don't know if I mentioned this before, but it's almost therapeutic. And
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten to the point now that once you set those schedules and you get used to, going out and sitting down and recording, whether you keep that recording or not, but just to sit down by yourself or to talk with someone, carry on a conversation like you are now, and then you turn around, it kind of lifts a weight, whether you have that weight on your chest or not. It's kind of therapeutic almost, where I'm like, it's kind of what I do, because like if I'm having a bad day, I'll head straight to the computer, pull up, turn on my microphone and just see what comes out. and
Yeah.
see what happens. And I may or may not use it. I may use it later in a show. I just never know. Just depends on. Sometimes it's good to just speak your mind.
Yeah. And that's another positive outlet because, again, I mean, we even see in the Olympics that mental health is on the rise with these, come to the forefront with these issues that people are having. And we're finally starting to actually talk about it. And I know, like, back in our grandmother's day, people tried to brush that stuff under the rug. We didn't want to talk about it.
Oh
And
yeah,
we've got an uncle that's sick. We don't want to talk about our sick uncle. You know, they would say that or cover it up. But now we're not just making light of it, but we're bringing full attention that, mental health doesn't have a certain look. It doesn't have a certain color. We're all affected by it in some kind of way. And we need an outlet. We need a way to unplug. We need a way to just stop and take a break. And some people turn to things that aren't good for them. And what better way to have an outlet than to say, I'm going to use my voice. But not only that, you're helping someone in that. You're helping yourself,
absolutely.
but you're helping others. And when you're helping others, it comes back to you. So that's a blessing within itself. It's a twofold win-win for everybody. So that's a great thing that you're doing, sharing yourself, and that helps. So
Yeah, and like you said, like you just said, sharing yourself, and in a way, this is a part of me because if it hadn't have been for my grandmother, if it hadn't have been for those stories she told, that I would never be where I'm at now. And so just something so small way back when to pique my interest then, has created something as I wouldn't say big, but hey, it's a step in the right direction
yeah,
of to where I'm at now. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. Like I said earlier, just the whole community of podcasters, and it's amazing what we can just a little bit of us like that can do, and kind of like yours, my podcast was born out of the pandemic, and I wasn't stuck at home. I was not. I never. Thankfully, I never stopped working. It's just I was like, you know what? I think I want to do this. What better time than now? And
yeah,
uh, and I think that's what the pandemic has done for a lot of folks. It's made them realize, how short life and our time here on this earth can be. And they were like, you know what? It's time for me to act. And
yes,
I'm like, why not? There's other people that have tried a lot harder, a lot bigger things, and have failed. If I do this and it succeeds, great. People will know. If if not, nobody's gonna care. So it'll be all right either way.
I know. I always say, I was like, well, nobody's listening, and then I go, oh, people are actually listening.
You are right. You are right. You
It's
never.
amazing.
Where y'all been? Because that don't for real. It's like a family reunion almost.
Yeah,
I'm like, I ain't
yeah,
seen you in ages. I don't even know you. But yeah, it's the truth. It's
yeah.
crazy. Um, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you one more story as it
Yes.
is one that I'm going to give you one more story, and then yeah, you guys have to tell me what you think about this.
Come on, tell
Now
us the
this
story.
okay. Let me get in the mood here. Let me pull my
Go
mic a
right
little bit
for it.
closer. All right. So this one is actually comes from the Gullah Geechee culture, and it's about the Bu Hag. Now, the Bu Hag is to believed. Imagine a skinless vampire-like creature, and this is believed. Like most folks, if you led a good life, a lot of people believe you would go to heaven. But if you led a bad life, the Gullah actually believe that you would actually remain here on Earth as a Bu Hag.
Uh-oh.
And yeah.
That might be worse than hell. I don't know.
I'm sorry. The look on your face kind of took me by surprise. But the Bu Hag, yeah. Have you ever heard the expression "the hag's riding you"?
Yes, actually, I
That's
have. I've heard
that's
that.
where that's where that comes from, and it's an experience. A lot of people chalk it up to sleep paralysis,
Okay.
but what it is a lot of people will wake up and they will. It's like they know they're awake, they're not dreaming, but they feel like a tremendous weight on their chest, and that's what they
I felt
mean
that
by
before. Uh-oh. I don't want
Uh,
the boo hag now. Come on, tell me the story so I
oh,
can. I ain't trying to be here with the boo hag now.
it's all right. I'm gonna tell you how to get rid of it.
That was a long time ago in my old days. I'm in the new day now.
That's right. So they believe that this is a person and can walk around just like me or you, and they actually can possess, like a human type skin it's like a skin suit that they put on during the day. And so they walk about just like me and you. And so what ends up happening is it is believed that salt, blue paint, and broomsticks, like straw brooms, and colanders will keep the boo hag at bay. Now, the boo hag is said, like I said before, is supposed to sit on your chest while you sleep and suck your soul or your life force out of your body while you sleep. So if you wake up in the morning and you feel tired, lethargic, but yet you think you had a good night's rest, maybe you were paid a visit by a boo hag. Now, like I said, it's believed that you supposed to don't freak out on me yet. It's believed that if you got to paint your porch or your door, the door frame, paint blue, and that's supposed to ward off evil spirits. It's also believed that if you put salt around your bed, it's supposed to keep the boo hag at bay. And
Now is
see,
that
because
sea salt or kosher salt?
I don't think it matters. The cheapest bottle of Morton's you can find.
Okay.
And because see the way the salt works is you actually, like I said, these are skinless creatures. So if it's something that's skinless like that, you have exposed membranes. And
Mm,
so if you were to put salt on an open wound, it hurts. And so
yes.
yeah, it's supposed to keep them at bay like that. And so another thing is you find a broom, a straw broom with as many straw bristles on the end as possible. Or you can use a colander with as many holes as possible. You set that outside of your bedroom door at night. And so if you are being paid a visit by a boo hag will actually, they're known to be curious creatures. So they will stop and count every straw bristle in the broom. Same with the holes in the colander. They will count every hole in the colander before moving on. So
Hmm.
I find it
Wow.
a very strange legend, but one I love nonetheless because it is on that darker side of things. But on the same hand, it's kind of like, who thought that they saw a boo hag at one point? This thing had to come from somewhere. And so it kind of makes you think, somebody had to have an experience with this at one point or another.
So did they actually see it, or did they just think they felt the presence of it?
Well, one story I've heard is that there was a gentleman, they all lived out in the country, and there was this young gentleman, and he had his eye on a pretty single gal that lived down on the other end of the road. Now, his buddies all got together and told him, say, hey, buddy, you don't want to mess with her. We telling you, you don't want to mess with her. And he was just like, look, I'm young, I'm single, and it's time for me to take a wife. He said, I've got my eye on her. And they're like, no, you don't want to do that. Well, against his buddy's better judgment, he started beginning to kind of slowly come around and kind of dropping by unexpectedly, all that kind of good stuff. And she kind of took the liking. Well, the next thing you know, they had wound up courting, and then they ended up getting married. So once they got married, he woke up one night and his wife wasn't in the bed. He looked all over the house, couldn't find her, opened the door, walked around the house, couldn't find her. He said, well, that was weird. In the heck is she at? So he waited. She never came. And so finally he said, the heck with it. He went back to sleep. So when he went back to sleep, he woke up the next day and his wife was in the bed. And so she said, where was you at last night? And she said, oh, I just went out on a little walk. I just couldn't sleep. So I just went out on a little walk. And he said, oh, okay. Okay. So a few nights later, same thing happened. He woke up, couldn't find his wife, roamed around, couldn't look for her, couldn't find her. He asked her again the next morning, where was you at? Oh, I was out walking. Okay. So then he took it to his problem to his buddies and he said, hey, I think my wife's cheating on me. I wake up in the middle of the night and she's nowhere to be found. He said, man, we tried to warn you of this. You married a Bu Hag. And they were like, do what? He said, yeah, you married a Bu Hag. He said, what do you mean? What do I do? How do I get rid of her? And so they told him what to do. And said, first of all, you go out in the yard and you get you a big cast iron like cauldron and you boil up. You get that fire as hot as you possibly can and you boil up some tar. And so he was supposed to boil up a whole bunch of tar outside of the home. And so then he was supposed to, his buddies told him, said, you've got to find the skin suit that it wears during the day. Said, once you find that, you'll know where it's at. And you got to go and you got to find you a whole bunch of salt. And he said, okay, I think I can do that. So the next night he woke up and she wasn't in the bed. He searched the whole house until he finally found its skin suit. When he found out where she puts it when she leaves, he said, I can, now I know to salt it. I know where it's at. So he set his plan in motion and he went out there before bedtime and he started this big old pot of tar. And he went and oh, baby, I'm so tired. I'm going to go to bed early tonight. And so he laid down. Well, of course, she laid down with him, but before long, she got up out the bed, shed her skin suit, placed it where she did, and then went off into the night. Now, he found the skin suit. He took all that salt he had purchased and he just lined the entire suit with salt. He put it back in where he found it. And then he went out there, tended to the pot of tar, and then he come back inside. So he pretended like he was asleep, but when his wife come in, and of course, all he could see, he couldn't see his wife. All he saw was this nasty looking skinless creature roaming about his house. And so the next thing you know, she goes and puts on the skin suit. And when she does, that salt made, it just kind of started constricting around her and she started going nuts. He pushes her out the window into the boiling pot of tar. And that was the end of that. So he got rid of her one way or the other. But it's a story I've heard several times now. It's just, like I said, I don't know if there's any truth behind it, but someone had to experience something like that to believe in that that much, even to the point where I had actually went and did an interview with a production company in Savannah, Georgia. And it was, the name of the production company is called the Savannah Underground. Now, what they do is they put on a play and they usually tell different Southern stories and tales, kind of like what we're talking about now, kind of on the darker side of the South's history. And so one of the stories they tell is the Bu Hag, and I actually got to do an interview with one of the actresses there in the production company. And she was telling me that they had actually went to Charleston to try and do research for that story, for that role. And they actually said they were actually speaking with Gullah Geechee, members of the Gullah Geechee community, and said nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to address it. Because they believe in it that much. And
They
I
don't want to
said
bring it
that it
up.
no,
Wow.
because even by speaking about it, they believe that they could bring a Bu Hag about their home or upon them. And I don't blame them either.
Yeah. Wow. So my thing is this, buddies. You tell me after the fact she's the Bu Hag. Why didn't you tell me she was the Bu Hag before you let me marry? You warned me she was not right, but you didn't say she was the Bu Hag.
That's right. Yeah, if you had just told me that up front, I probably would. I would just said, "Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. I
And
ain't
how
gonna
did
waste my
they
time
know?
with
How did they know who she was and he didn't?
it."
Like,
That's a
come
good
on.
question. That's a good question.
See, I just want to
Well,
know. Like, how
well,
you
there
know
was
this
one,
stuff?
but there was one night. It was late years ago, and I had one too many drinks, and yeah,
Oh my goodness, though. I mean, you just never know. I mean, you just never know these days because I remember it's so funny because I think about this. When I was little, you hear sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. And now all of a sudden here's bed bugs. Now, come on. I don't remember seeing bed
Right.
bugs when I was a kid, but now bed bugs are running rampant. Did we manifest
I'm
these
telling
things
you,
or what? Where'd they come from?
I
I
have
mean,
no idea.
seriously.
Um,
So I mean, they had to come from somewhere.
well, see, you got the. I've heard the bed bugs thing, but what my other grandma used to tell me was, all right, now you better go to sleep. Red eyes and bloody bones is gonna get you. I'm like, great. Now I gotta sit up here in bed thinking about a bunch of red eyes and bloody bones
Now
staring out
you
the
gonna go to
window
sleep
at
with
me.
red eyes and
Yeah,
bloody
yeah,
bones? What?
I'm gonna sleep real good. Thanks,
Oh,
grandma.
I never go to sleep eyes really. Oh. See, and the thing I was gonna say earlier is your grandma taught you some good lessons and told you some good stories. They say raise a child as they should grow when they get older, they won't depart from it. And you didn't depart. You're telling these stories, but they scar us. They tell us these things that's ingrained in us. And then we grow up and we have children and we pass this mess to our kids. So some of this stuff, I was thinking, I'll tell my kids stuff and I go, you know what? I'm gonna quit it. I'm gonna quit doing you like my parents did me. I'm gonna quit telling you stuff about these long walks we used to have to take. We drive cars now, kids. I'm just like, we do. We do. But you gotta pay for your own
Right.
gas now. How you do that, I don't know. But
That's right.
but the stories are what makes us it's the fabric of our life. It really is. And so who are we without stories? Who are we without being able to say, I remember this one time, or back in my day, or did you know? Because there's a lot of truth. I've always heard that truth is stranger than fiction. And sometimes people will believe a lie before they believe the truth, but sometimes the truth is like, wow. I think we're froze. Hang on a second. Are you with me?
I am. I don't know what happened.
Okay. Okay, we froze up there for a minute, but I think we're back. Okay, so did you hear
Yeah,
what I said about truth being stranger than fiction?
I did not, unfortunately.
Oh, okay, I said sometimes people will believe a lie before they believe the truth, but sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.
You're
And
right.
it's like, wow, that really happened. That really is the truth. And
Yeah.
you can't make this stuff up. I mean, some things you just can't make up. And when someone tells you something, it's like, amazing. But you are a great storyteller, and I'm glad that you have graced my show with your stories. And I know people are going to get a treat when they listen to your podcast, and they are going to get some history. They're going to get some myths and magic and some facts. I
Yeah.
mean, because like you said, there is some truth to these stories. There, I mean, I've heard about the lizard man, and so I believe the lizard man is real. I mean, and the Bu Hag. I mean, I can tell you, I haven't seen the Bu Hag. I don't want to see the Bu Hag, but I have had
Nope.
encounters where I have experienced not being able to move. And I've had other people say the same thing where they've woke up and they've not been able to move. It's like something has been holding them down and they've not been
Right.
able to move. Now, what brings it on? I don't know. I don't want to find out. I know now what to do to get rid of it.
There you go.
I don't want to know what to bring it on. But it's great that you are researching this and you're finding out this information. But not only do you have one podcast, two podcasts, but you're working on a third podcast. So before we jump out of here, would you mind enlightening us on this third podcast you're working on?
Unfortunately, I can't do that. I will. I will. I'll give you as much as I can. But
Okay,
think
yeah.
back. But think back to the '80s, things of your '80s, your childhood, and then kind of combine that with horror. Think of this as part fiction, part truth, based on real experiences, I guess you could say. And so it's kind of going to be a mix of the two. Um, so yeah, I mean, I would love to be able to give more away, but
You
until
don't have
it's
to. That's
everything's good,
enough. Leave them in
until it's
suspense so that
confirmed.
way
That's
they'll
right.
want to come looking for you. Yeah, because I mean, because now I believe that gets people anxious and now they want to know more. So now they'll want to come looking for you, but they don't have to come looking for you. Tell them where to find you.
You guys can find me. I'm on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, pretty much anywhere where you can find podcasts, even as far as Pandora and Amazon. You can, if you want to go straight there and pick whichever link you'd like to choose from, you can go to anchor.fm/Southern Spectre. And yeah, you can listen to me there. But yeah, like I said, I'm on most major platforms. So.
All right. And so, when you go around to the restaurants, do you just do that in your local area? How far out do you go?
Well, actually, I was traveling as far as Charleston, so I was going about an hour and a half, 2 hours away.
Okay. All right. So you never know where you might pop up. I mean, hey, well,
Never
you
know.
are you're doing an awesome job. I do think you have the voice for it, and I think you're going to do phenomenal things, telling stories and doing your podcast. And I mean, like I said, I can barely keep up with the one, and you've got two and a third in the making. I mean, you are just doing amazing things. So continue to do what you're doing. Continue to tell your grandma stories, because I mean, there's nothing like a grandma story. I'm telling you.
You're right. You are right.
So, is there anything else that you would like the world to know about you? Because I'm telling you what, this podcast, I've reached people all over. And it's so many people that I've come in connection with. And so you never know who's listening and who's watching. So what do you want people out here to know about you and why they should listen?
Well, you never know what you're going to hear on my podcast, The Southern Spectre. You never know what you're going to hear. I may be talking about a horror movie or a horror franchise one day. I may be talking about the Bu Hag one day. Most recently, I've actually incorporated my last episode, actually incorporated actual evidence that has been taking place around me lately. So that is like one of my most it's pretty intriguing. Some weird stuff has been going on here. Matter of fact, I'm recording in me and the wife's closet right now, and even where I'm sitting, better not talk about it too much. But even where I'm sitting at right now, some things were happening. I was actually on another show a couple of weeks ago, and then last week the lady actually uh, notified me that we actually caught something else here in my closet speaking into the microphone.
Mm, I
I ain't got
believe
enough
it.
room. I ain't got enough room in my bed for a boo hag, so that ain't happening.
Okay. Like, you better get out of here. Get some salt. You better get you some salt, some brooms, some colander.
That's
Sing
right.
you some songs. Do what you got to do. Get them out of there. Leave the whole
Absolutely.
house. What they say, don't throw the baby away with the bathtub water. Yeah, well, baby and the bathtub got to
That's
go.
right.
All right. Well, you know what? It's really been a pleasure having you on, and I've enjoyed having you on because I love stories, and I love hearing stuff, and you know my faces. I just can make some crazy faces anyway. Like,
Yes, I've enjoyed being here, and thank you for having me on. It's definitely been a pleasure. I've enjoyed every moment of it.
absolutely. Anyway, we can help each other out. I'm here for it. And so let me know. But hang out for just a second while I get us out of here. Hey, people, this is a new day and a new age. We do things differently nowadays. And so we are connected all over the world in all kind of ways. And so wherever you are, you don't have to be down and out. You can tap in and you can listen and you can hear a story that will lift your spirits right up. And if you are in a place that you don't want to be, you can listen to a story that can take you somewhere else. And then you can come back and start all over again, because life is what you make it. You don't have to be lost and alone in this world, because everybody has a story. So whatever your story is, whatever you're going through, it's not as bad as the boo hag. You got real skin. You got real skin you're walking around here in. You got a real soul and you got a real heart. So get up and do something with it. Because remember, you were created with a purpose. So you might as well be great. Go ahead and check out the Southern Spectrum and the Southern Spoonful podcast. And then stay tuned for what he's got coming up, because you never know what you might hear, what you might learn, and he just might find Bigfoot while he's at it. You never know. I'm just saying.
If
We're
I do,
hoping
I'm bringing
so.
him to your husband. So
Please don't. I don't want to go Sasquatching. I really don't.
he's the one that wanted to meet him.
We found him in one little town we was in, and that was enough for me. He was on a little pole, and he got to take a picture of it. That was enough. Now you're good. Keep it moving. Now the real deal come out. Because I was heard that he can do telepathy, so he can go from here to there. He don't run. He just can. No, and I don't have the disappearing thing yet, so no. I don't know. No, thank you. Nope. I'll just stay right here where I'm at. You can keep it. If you find him, tell me about it. I'll listen
I
to
sure
the
will.
story. All right. Well, God bless you. You have a good evening, and everybody else, be mindful and be blessed. And thank you for watching us tonight. And we'll see you again real soon. And come back again for tomorrow night when I will be talking about my mindful journey. Until then, have a good evening. Thank you. And give me a second and we will be out.